And we are live, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. It's Logos Media's UnSpun episode number 142. And I'm joined once again by Colin Flaherty. Flaherty. How do you pronounce that? I think I always say that wrong.
You ought to find Flaherty.
So, I've been wanting to have you back on for a bit, and I've binged on your channel a number of times over the years, and used to have an amazing channel up on YouTube, which of course was pulled down. And I've been binge watching you on BitChute recently. I know you've got your channel over there, and on where do they move you to now?
I'm over it.
Minds.
I post in like 10 places. Minds.com, Facebook, Twitter. There's a bunch of people who post all my videos on YouTube. I don't do it, but they do. So I'm so easy to find. It's ridiculous.
Well,
BitChute.
yeah, well, and so how was it must have been frustrating though when they initially shut you down on YouTube, or did you already diversify enough to not worry about it?
No, my channel hit a sweet spot there for about a year where when I got kicked off, I was at 12 million views a month. And, that's a lot of people.
Right.
And so they just cut me off. And, I had a lot, I kept a lot of the audience, but, I was on a pretty hot trajectory and YouTube just shut me down for basically no reason whatsoever. They shut me down like 5 times. Finally, after the 5th time, I said, listen, I just don't want to depend on some college graduate with purple hair to decide what I can and cannot say on the air. So I just decided I'm going to do minds.com, fire my podcast back up, Facebook, Twitter, all these different things. And thankfully, my audience follows me around wherever I go.
Well, good to know. I'm sure you probably lost a lot of people that just binge on YouTube and search you and maybe find your material. I think, I don't remember how I came across your material originally, but, so you were on my show in August 2017, and I listened to that episode again today. It was pretty good. But why do you say that the subject we're going into tonight is the greatest lie of our generation?
Okay, I'll even take a half step back and remind people that, so I write books and I make videos and podcasts about black violence. Here we go. Hey, what's up? About black violence and how it's wildly out of proportion and how so many people are in so much denial, deceit, and delusion about it. So I document that. So my big trick is I'll show what a reporter says, then I'll use a video to compare that with what really happened. And so you see the reporters just pretending that when they see some, like I did a bunch of stories today, maybe shootings or murders, and they're always pretending it's not part of a pattern. A lot of them pretend that they've never seen it happen before. A lot of them say it's random. And I come in and say, no, it happens a lot in your town. It's not random because it follows a pattern. There is no such thing as a pattern of randomness. And so we're just trying to tell the truth about what I call the greatest lie of our generation, the hoax of black victimization. I mean, every time we turn on the TV, whether it's MSNBC, CNN, or the radio, NPR, your newspaper, the dominant story of our age is black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. And so I come back and go, no, that's not only not true, the opposite is true. You can talk about crime numbers if you want. Black crime wildly out of proportion. Black on white versus white on black is 10 times 50, 1,000 to 1. These are pretty transparently obvious, and a lot of people know this. And if you don't know it, there's only one reason you don't know it, is because you have decided to put a little shell around yourself to not know it.
Yeah, now, I remember back in the 90s and early 2000s, you constantly heard stuff like, well, we're victims driving while black, cops are targeting us, we're really innocent, driving while black or brown, this kind of stuff. So it goes back quite a ways, and it even goes back probably into the 60s civil rights movement.
There was an enormous, the thing that really is in a lot of people's minds that are watching the show now is what happened to them when busing started. Started busing a lot of white kids into black schools and vice versa. Enormous amount of violence in black schools. Enormous amount of violence targeted at white kids in black schools that continues up to today. And back in the day, we didn't have videos. Well, we didn't have everybody filming it. And so everybody could just say, no, what are you talking about, Colin? That doesn't really happen here. We're all one big happy family here at the Tigers of Smith High School. Now, no matter what happy face they put on, there's always, I mean, every day there's a large scale episode of black mob violence in a school in this country, sometimes several. And every video I do is kind of a challenge. The challenge is, look, if white kids are doing this, if Asian kids are doing this, and anywhere near the numbers, please show me because I don't see it. And if it is wildly out of proportion, tell me what that means. Tell me what it means that you're in such denial about it.
Have you ever heard of whites starting a riot in a mall?
You know, I got a ton of stuff on malls, and I'm sitting here going, no, about 6 months ago, there was a mall, I think it was in Alabama. And there was a video of a bunch of black people rampaging through the mall. So there was a video of security coming in and going, okay, you guys got to go. First of all, you got to take your hoodies down. And when they didn't want to do that, they said, okay, we're kicking you out of the mall. 2 days later, like these three housewives walked through the mall, white housewives walked through the mall with their hoodies up. They made a video out of it. That was proof positive that the security at the mall was racist, targeting black people for racist security. Okay, whatever. So that's about the worst thing I've seen that white people do at a mall.
So it doesn't really even happen. So
well, if it does, you know what? I'm open to it. Somebody please send me something. Good Lord. You know what? Here's the thing. I do. So, we had 12 million views a month. Now I'm about half of that on my different platforms. I'm always asking people, please send me the white violence in schools, in malls, in parks. Send it to me. And everybody's always saying, yeah, Colin, I got 1 million. All you got to do is look on YouTube for it. Okay, send it to me. Okay, I'll call you back next week, Colin. See ya.
And you don't hear back.
No, it's kryptonite asking somebody to do that. That's why I don't like to ask it. It scares them away.
Let's talk about Jesse Lee Peterson for a minute. What can you enjoying that cigar?
Yeah. Jesse Lee Peterson is the most important guy in America. I've been saying this for a long time. He's the one guy, I think, who just speaks. I really kind of like model myself after him, to tell you the truth. He speaks without fear or favor. He just tells the truth. He's found something. He found a really important truth, and he tells it without apologizing, without backing up. He's very creative about how he tells it. And so I remember I met Jesse after I wrote my first book, White Girl Bleed a Lot. The funny thing is, if you want to learn about something, you write a book, then you learn about it after the book's out, because then everybody tells you what's going on. So I'm on the line with Jesse. I was on his show, and I'm watching his videos, and he's sitting there telling a white audience, he's saying, listen, you guys are so busy looking for that little bit of racism inside of yourselves that you're totally ignoring the enormous amount of black hostility directed at you. And that kind of opened my eyes, and I think that opens a lot of people's eyes when they consider that. Because, like I said, the dominant narrative is white racism, and nobody's talking about black on white hostility that is so easy to find.
Well, and he actually launched White Pride Month last year, because whites were too afraid to say something. And so he ended up doing it, and he's a black, minister, and I've watched quite a number of his shows. I agree with the vast majority of what he says, and he's definitely really good at it. He definitely cuts through the BS and just, tells the truth, like you said. But it's he goes into what's taboo, and he'll go into black neighborhoods like in Los Angeles, etc., and he'll interview people about what they blacks, what they think about whites, and every single
I was just
time,
going to mention that.
Yeah, and every single time, maybe not, maybe once in a rare while he'll get one who isn't racist, but the vast majority blurt out some extremely racist stuff. And then if he goes and interviews whites, it's not that way. But yet we're told constantly that, the opposite is true. In this day and age, everything is inverted.
When black people talk about white people, they're not looking over their shoulder. They're not lowering their voice. They're not choosing their words. They're just telling us in 1,000 different ways they're not really that into us on any level. They just don't like us. One thing I like what Jesse does, and Jesse uses my videos to do this. He'll take a computer screen and he'll take it into the ghetto and he'll show people these videos of enormous level of black violence and dysfunction. And he'll say to the black people watching it in the hood, he'll go, "What do you think of this?" He gets one universal reaction. White people do it too. So we're all sitting here going, "Okay, I understand you say that, but please," and I understand you're not used to being challenged when you say something about black people because, I mean, that's the one taboo left. You cannot challenge a black person talking about black victimization. But please, tell me where it's happening. Tell me, like, yeah, okay, 2 nights ago, New Orleans. I love using examples. The further we get, the sooner we get to reality and get away from theory, the better we are. 2 nights ago, New Orleans, 4 kids from Denver. They walk out of their hotel. There's a busload of fellas and their lovely ladies outside of their hotel. These people are hanging out their window. They are yelling racial and sexual epithets at a homeless woman just sitting on the curb. Okay. So this guy from Denver decides he's going to go all white night, and he goes up to the fellas in the bus and he says, "Hey, knock it off." Next thing you know, they're pouring out of the bus, and this guy gets the crap beat out of him. He's in the hospital, broken teeth, broken face, broken nose, broken lip. It's going to be a year before he recovers from this with all the surgeries he needs. That's black on white hostility. Now, did anybody take a sign out, hold a sign up saying, "We don't like white people, thus we're going to beat you up"? No, but the pattern is the thing. And in New Orleans, there's an enormous level of black on white violence, enormous level of black violence. I mean, today, you want to freak people out? Here's my one thing to freak out, to trigger the liberals, 100% guaranteed. Tell them the following fact from the New York Times. 3/4 of mass shooters are black. This happened today in New Orleans. A cop was chasing somebody. A guy pulls out a gun. A black person pulls out a gun, shoots it into a crowd. 5 people get shot. So, because whenever we're discussing this stuff on my videos and on my platforms or on my podcasts or whatever, my articles, somebody, the reply from a black person or their many liberal enablers is, "Well, Colin, what about Dylan Roof? What about all the mass shooters? White people are the mass shooters." Well, there's a black mass shooting in this country every day. That's weird, isn't it? Like somebody could say that.
And they only parade the ones around that are done by whites, and then if it's a black person, they actually refrain from mentioning that it was a black or African male.
And I document this on my channel. A couple of weeks ago, I put up 22 videos. I put up. I'm not just saying there's 22. I'm saying no. Jamal, Chiquina, Tequila, whatever their names are. 22 examples of 22 mass shootings, 3 or more in that period of time. I mean, it's an enormous amount. And boy, people just their minds blow up when they hear that.
And then the social justice warriors want to take the guns away from the people who want to defend themselves from this stuff. And, basically when you take the guns away, only the criminals who don't follow laws by definition will be left with the guns. I mean, it's absolutely absurd.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it?
Oh, it's just, yeah.
I mean, everything's upside down, like you were saying, especially when you talk about race. Everything's upside down, everything. And so that's
absolutely
why
right.
Everything. And so you talk about guns. It's like, yeah, let's take guns away from the white guys and the Asian guys and the Asian shopkeepers. That'll make your neighborhood safer.
Now, let's go back to the L.A. riots back in the 90s. Now, the Asian store owners and market owners, they climbed up on their roofs and whatnot with their ARs and their AKs, and they prevented a lot more damage that would have occurred if they hadn't have done that.
That's correct. But, it's funny, those riots, people don't really recognize how much they were targeted at the Asians, Asian shopkeepers and storekeepers and property owners in those areas.
Well, let's get into that. And you talk about this topic a lot on your channel. Asian targeted violence from blacks. How big a problem is it?
Oh, good Lord. Ask any Asian person. I remember there's a story like in Sanford, especially in the Bay. Say, you can all these stories. They're like magical mystery tours, right? You just travel around the country, like in San Francisco. Big story out of San Francisco, the daily paper up there. Headline: San Francisco's dirty secret: Black on Asian violence. 80% of the robberies, strong arm robberies on the streets of San Francisco were Black on Asian. Travel down the road to
80%.
80.
Wow.
And that's in San Francisco. That doesn't even count around the Bay Area, like across the Bay in Richmond and Oakland, those very dark and dangerous chocolate cities where Asian people are targets all the time over there. A lot of Asian people are aware of this. Why they don't speak out more, I do not know. Ditto in Philadelphia, the good example. All the Asian shopkeepers, right, with these stores. They just had a big hearing in Philly about it 6 months ago, where the Asian shopkeepers, when you go into your corner store, they were putting up plexiglass because there was so much stuff happening, so much violence, so much stuff being thrown, people getting punched. So they said, we're just going to put up plexiglass. The city council held a 4-hour hearing where for 3 hours, all we heard was how this is terrible and racist that anybody would put up plexiglass. It's an insult to black people. And finally, after the third hour, they let the Asian people start to talk about what it's like to be down there and to have a business in these high crime areas. And it's the level of crime. I mean, hell, there's a video out. It's by a guy named YG. It's called Meet the Flockers. Does that ring a bell?
No. Meet the Flockers?
Yeah. It's a step-by-step video about how to find an Asian home and how to rob them when you find it. Talks about you get your boys, you get a gun, you get guys who aren't afraid to do what it do. You knock on the door. If they don't answer, you go in. Don't steal the TVs. Steal the jewelry and the cash, because if they're Asian, that's what they have. That's a video you can find on YouTube right now.
And they don't take it down.
No, and good old Colin says, that's crazy. The college grads in their purple hair go, Colin, no, you're a bad person for noticing that.
In about, must have been 2000 or 2001, I was working for a friend of mine, and I had to go to a number of stores up in the Bay Area. And I was in downtown San Francisco, and I walked out of one of the stores I just finished. I was doing some merchandising work, and I see these 4 black guys. They're targeting me. And I put my shoulders down, I toughened up, and I just went right for them. And they actually backed away from me, I didn't give them for a second that I was going to be an easy target, and they actually backed off. I mean, they would have crushed me, but I just went right for them and said, "Excuse me," and pushed my way right through them, and they just let me by. But
it's amazing. What a strong and good, smart move on your part. One of the things we document a lot on my videos is home invasions or strong arm robberies or things happening on the street. They always begin with a question. Can I borrow $1? Can I have a quarter? Can I borrow a bus fare because my grandmother died? Can I come in your house and have a glass of water? Can I borrow your cell phone? And the thing I talk about is black people don't need $1. Their grandmother didn't die. They have their own cell phones, and they're not thirsty. They're just sizing you up. That's how it works. And if you give the signal out that you're an easy target, as you did not, boy, this happens a lot to old people too. Oh my God, black on senior violence, amazing. How prevalent that is, and how it's a black thing.
Let's get into these so-called academics at Yale who are saying that it's the whites who are the problem and causing all of the black on white violence.
When I think Yale, I think of let me see. Keep going. Oh, yeah, okay. I think there was something like a it was for Black History Month. There was something just a couple weeks ago, right? They put out a big seminar.
Right.
Gotcha.
And you had done some videos about it, talking about it a little bit.
And and on the Yale's in New Haven, right? So I've done a lot of videos on New Haven, and I've done a lot of videos on black people targeting the professors and students at Yale. Nasty business, nasty business. And so it was just weird to me that the artistic community of Yale, they put on this performance art display featuring poetry and all this other dancing, and it was all featuring white on black violence. It was like, what is this? What level of delusion do you have to be in to talk about white violence in New Haven when it is transparently and wildly the opposite is true? So we see that every day.
And
here's the thing. Here's another.
Sure.
Let me just keep going just for 1 second.
Sure.
So at Yale, if you study, the liberal arts at Yale, you are going to learn that black people are relentless victims of relentless white racism all the time, everywhere. That explains everything. That theory, that statement actually has a name. It's called critical race theory. This is something that's a religion now.
That's what it was called. That's right.
It's a religion. You learn it at college, and lots and lots of teachers of black, whatever you're calling it at Yale, black studies, Africana studies, whatever. They are quite happy to talk to your students and the media about it whenever Black Lives Matter shows up and says, white people suck. But what about all the crime in New Haven, the black crime, the black criminals assaulting the professors, the black criminals assaulting the medical students? My question always is, hey, where'd that professor go that was just explaining to us all this, all of this stuff where white people suck? Where are they explaining to us why Taquan just beat Johnny over the head with a pipe and stole his laptop? So I don't know why they're not there, but I mean, it's crazy. The level of insanity and delusion on these college campuses. I mean, I can't see how it could be any higher.
Now, what do you say to people who call you a racist or you're disinformation or controlled opposition or something like that? And you're spreading lies. I mean, I've actually spent, probably at least 24 to 48 hours actually going through and watching, video after video. And most of your videos are only like, 2 to 6 minutes long. So I'm talking, I've been through many hundreds of your videos. What do you have to say to people who haven't spent the time going through your actual research?
Well, let me ask you a question. You tell me if I achieved my goal or not. When I do these videos, I don't do causes. I don't do solutions. So there's not really any little hooks to get into my stuff. All I'm saying is I'm talking directly to people who are looking at me and saying, Colin, this isn't happening. Or white people do it too. There's three excuses, right? One, it's not happening. Two, white people do it too. Three, white people deserve it. And so my attitude is, okay, there's my videos. I'm not giving you any. I'm not going to have a little discussion with you about causes or solutions. Those are deflections. I'm just saying this happened, and it happened wildly out of proportion. And we've got reporters, public officials, and talking heads who are in total denial, deceit, and delusion about it. There's not really any wiggle room in there for people to get their hooks in me other than to call me a name and go running away.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, Did you notice anything like that? I'm sitting there giving the grand theory of everything. No, I don't do that.
And you're going by, official news reports typically. Let's talk for a minute about how often do police officers reach out to you?
Oh man, all the time. I just got one. Here's something I got 2 hours ago. So on my podcast, when I do go on a little bit longer than 6 minutes, over an hour by podcast, the other day I was talking about, a lot of people, they want to know what they can do to help. And so I'm telling people, whatever you do, if you work in a cubicle, if you're a cop or a fireman, EMT, or your teacher, or you have an HR department, you really don't want to take my book into your workplace and hold it up and go, hey, people, listen up. I got something I want to tell you. You will be fired. And I said, don't do that. If you want to help, there are ways to help, but don't get yourself fired, okay?
That book right there.
You know what? You know what's amazing? How many people I have had to talk off the ledge. It's like, Colin, I'll work at a defense contractor. I'm going to take your book in there tomorrow. No, don't do that. Because I say, listen, if you want to help by doing this or that, or contributing to what we're doing here. But okay, the letter. Okay, back to the letter from a cop 2 hours ago. I got a letter from Idaho. The guy goes, Colin, what you said is true. Last year, a member of a district attorney staff in Idaho, I won't be any more specific. Probably everybody in Idaho already knows who I'm talking about. I think he either posted one of my videos or he posted a video about black crime. They went into his office an hour later and they said, listen, you have 11 months till you retire. We're just going to buy you out. You're out of here. Leave. So he lost his job because of that. And I don't want to see other people lose their livelihoods. So be brave, but be smart. But there are a lot of people. I'm one of them. I built my life where there is no HR person standing over my shoulder. There's no client to come in and, blah, blah, blah. So I built my life where I can speak the truth without really worrying about it. And on we go. So yeah, lots of cops send me lots of stories, whether it's about college campuses, whether it's Chicago, whether it's about bad things happening inside the police departments. The cops, if you know any cops, ask them what's going on. Ask them if they've ever heard of me. Ask them if they've ever seen my videos. Ask them if there's, ask them what they would do if they heard their mom was moving into the city near the hood. What would they do? These cops are very, very clear about what's going on.
And, when I interviewed you in 2017, you had mentioned that 9 out of 10 church leaders were part of the problem. But then we do have exceptions like Jesse Lee Peterson who are out there beating the trail, and leading the way on this type of material. So, if it were about racism, why would guys like Jesse Lee Peterson, and who's the other guy on your book here? There's a couple of these guys that you cite.
Thomas Sowell, Alan West.
Right. And, and they're telling people to go out and read your books so that people get their minds around this information. And what do you have, like 900 citations in this book, something like that?
There's like 900. There's a billion. Yeah, there's no shortage of citations. Believe me, lots of those citations lead to videos.
How many of those videos have been taken down since you published this?
Well, YouTube took the videos down. That I have the QR code in there, and YouTube took those videos down, but the footnotes almost all the footnotes lead to videos that are still up. And so, listen, when you're done reading that book, there's so much source. It's sourced so well, you're not going to have any doubt about what happened and where it happened and what really happened and who's telling the truth about it.
944 footnotes, endnotes, whichever.
But here's the thing. That book's easy to read. So it's not like this is not an academic treatise where I'm saying, this study happened here, this study happened there. No, my thing is, I don't like doing statistics because the numbers are so wildly out of proportion. We've already made that case. They're wildly out of proportion. And whether it's 30, 50, or 100 times greater certain kinds of crime, what's the difference? So let's not dwell on the numbers. Let's dwell on something more persuasive. The people who are victims of this crime and how the criminals people treat the criminals as if they are the victims.
Exactly right. Yeah. And that's a really good point. I'm glad you mentioned
We document that a lot in those videos.
Let's talk about black on white violence in black schools.
Oh man. I think I've put up 3 or 4 videos in the last 3 or 4 days. Just riots in schools. And for 10 years, it was the policy of this country, 8 under Obama, 2 under Trump. It just changed recently. That the Obama people knew that if there was any disparity in the school between black students and white students in discipline or performance or expulsions or suspensions, any difference, that was because one reason only. That was white racism. They had teams of people from the Department of Justice, Department of Education, going around to school districts all around the country. Every teacher in America knew they were on notice. You had to be really, really careful about suspending black students, and you had to get that balance up because in some places whether it's 3-1, 5-1, 10-1, it's always wildly out of proportion. Black students are being disciplined more often. The Obama people convinced the world that it was all about white racism. As a result, black people in schools knew there were no consequences for violent behavior. Enormous amount of videos of black riots in school. And, if you look into a cafeteria and you see 100 kids fighting, that's not a large fight. That's a riot. And so, I don't know, where was it the other day? 6 black people got arrested. And just the day before that, a mother was going, hey, my son's been, they black people. She didn't say it, but I said it. I said, black people have been taunting, harassing, torturing, threatening, beating her child for months. And this is all on video.
Yeah, somebody just posted, I went to a black school and it was hell on earth, and I'm a Caucasian Hispanic.
I'm my next book, one of my next books, I've been collecting letters from people like that, and I encourage that gentleman to send me an email, colin@colinflaherty.com. Just tell me what happened in your school. Tell me the worst things. Tell me how the teachers reacted, how your parents reacted, how fellow students reacted. Did you even finish? A lot of people don't finish school under those conditions. I mean, it is hell. And it's funny, if you do the numbers, do some back of the envelope numbers, like when this started under busing, right? So you got, I don't know, if you do some numbers, just how many kids this is happening to every year, white kids who go to black schools, and then you run those numbers out for 30, 40 years, that's over 1 million people that have seen this close up, just like that guy right there. 1 million.
Now, and then this guy, Ron, just posted, he says, I'm a white man in Detroit. Tell me about racism. But what I want to mention.
What's that? I don't even know what that means.
I'm presuming he means him living in Detroit. He gets attacked is what I'm guessing.
Yeah, why? I don't even know why you would live in Detroit. I mean, I know I live in Wilmington, Delaware, 65% black, but I'm here for a specific reason. So I can see what's going on. I can see the violence and the denial. I mean, why would he choose to live in Detroit?
Yeah. And, a few weeks ago you posted, maybe it was a week or two ago, I don't remember the date. You had posted a video and you were calling the parents out for abuse because the parents were forcing their son to go to a black school, and the bus driver had actually pulled over on the way to school and had the white kid get out so that the black kids could beat him up.
It's all on video. You saw it, right?
I saw it, yes.
I mean, if I had told you that, if I had said, hey, listen, it's so bad, the bus drivers are kicking kids off the bus, and the kid, can you still hear his voice in your head?
Yeah, he was scared to death, and I was just seeing if I could find the video here. I don't remember what you titled it.
Neither do I. He was scared on a primal level. He was begging for help. He was begging for mercy. They kicked him off the bus, and the black kid, the much bigger black kid, followed him off the bus. And you see the video. He's beating the piss out of this white kid. Now, flash forward a week later. I haven't even put this up yet. That's an indication of how many videos I have. Another bus. There's an autistic 4-year-old girl strapped into a chair on a bus, facing the back of the bus. You see on video a 9-year-old black kid, 5 years older than this girl, who cannot move. He's going up there. He's punching her, slapping her, threatening her. They found bite marks on that girl. Bite marks. And the bus driver is sitting up there hearing all this, 5 feet away. They saw the video of the bus stopping. The bus driver picks up the little girl, gives her to the parents, this autistic girl, little white girl. And she was meowing like a feral cat in a cage. And the parents go, why is she crying? He goes, I don't know. Well, he knew exactly why she was crying. And so the level of violence directed at white kids in black schools is enormous. And I'm kind of done with parents who send their kids, the white kids, to black schools. I'm calling them out on it. I'd say you're guilty of child abuse. Did you remember what Howard Stern was talking about when he
N-
said that stuff?
no.
So Howard Stern has talked about this on the air 20 times. Easy to find. I've posted it. Easy to find on YouTube. So Howard Stern went to school at Roosevelt High School in Long Island for 1 year, ninth grade. It was basically there were very few white kids in the school except for him. And his his mom and dad, he imitates his mom on the air, and his mom says, "Howard, we want you to be our ambassador to black people, to let them know that white people really like them." And Howard was going to school and getting the shit beat out of him every day. Finally, he just said he wasn't going to school anymore, and his parents moved. So lots of celebrities have had experience with this. What about Henry Rollins? Does that name ring a bell?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember his story?
No.
Henry Rollins did this for National Geographic. They take these famous people back to where they went to school. So Henry Rollins, his
Maybe I
parents
did
got
see this, but remind me.
he was he's like that bald headed
Sure.
punk rocker.
Right.
So his parents got divorced, and his mom moved to Southeast Washington D.C. Anybody anywhere near D.C. knows that's a black neighborhood. Henry Rollins goes to school, and he said every day I would go to school and I'd be surrounded by black people, and they would all start chanting, "White can't fight, white can't fight." And he said they threatened him and beat him and tortured him until every day he would piss his pants in the schoolyard. And the weird thing is today, Henry Rollins is down with the cause of black victimization. It's almost like he's got the Stockholm syndrome. There's been a lot of famous people that have really, really nasty experiences with black on white violence over a long period of time.
Interesting. There was another point I was going to bring up. Now I've forgotten what it was, but wow. Yeah, that's just.
And the school, there's one of the first stories I did involved black violence against Asian kids at a high school in South Philadelphia. And 13 Asian kids had to go to the emergency room. South Philadelphia High School was like 95% black, sprinkle a few Asian, mostly immigrant kids. And these kids, all they wanted to do was go to school and study. That's all they wanted. For years, they'd go to school, they'd be harassed, tortured, beaten, assaulted, threatened. They went to the security guard. "Hey, I can't do nothing." Went to the teacher. "I can't do nothing." Went to the principal. "Can't do nothing." They went to the superintendent of schools. Her name's Ackerman. She's not around anymore. She told them, and she gave them a flyer, how instructing the Asian kids how to behave around black people so they would not antagonize black people. This woman was black. I mean, the amount of abuse going on in black. There's no learning going on. We know that in Baltimore. There are 13 schools, black high schools, where nobody reads above a third grade level, or does math. No education going on there. Just violent cauldrons, and I don't know how they could be any worse, to tell you the truth.
And it's like it's not just physical abuse, the level of psychological abuse and the permanent damage done psychologically. I mean, how could you even address that,
So in my neighborhood, let's say there were 40 kids, 20 went to the local public high school, 20, as I did, went to the Catholic schools. At the local public high schools, P.S. DuPont is the name of the school, still there. Those 20 kids that went there, that school went from white to black almost overnight. So these kids were the remnants of the last remnants of white kids going to that school, people my age. I saw a kid the other day that what was there. His name was Ralph. I said, "Hey, Ralph, am I remembering this correctly, or am I just kind of having a false memory? But you guys, every day I used to hear you guys come back to the playground, and they would tell these wicked stories of all this violence and abuse they had to go through to get to school, in school." And he said, "No, you're not. It was a lot worse than you remember." And of those 20 kids, I would say only two or three graduated from high school. Not that high school, but like 15, they entered this life of, in the gray zone, no high school education, petty crime, joblessness, crappy jobs, driving trucks and this and that, alcoholism, drug abuse. The effect has been the damage to these people from that black on white violence in their school has lasted a lifetime for them.
Somebody is asking, and it's the same person that just mentioned this. Ask Colin about Chester, Pennsylvania. It's right outside of Wilmington. Can you mention anything about that?
Well, it's right up the street. It used to be a little hard scrabble, lower middle class, working class neighborhood with lots of red brick homes. People would go out in the morning. The women would be out there scrubbing the steps. They'd all go to work in the refineries. Now my first impression, last memory of Chester is seeing a video where, the cops were chasing somebody and they had him and they were arresting him. All of a sudden, the cops and the firefighters and the EMTs are surrounded by a couple hundred black people and they're throwing rocks at them. So it's a dirty, dangerous chocolate city, nasty, nasty business happening there all the time. And everybody just looks at it and says, hey, that's just Chester. I mean, Colin, why? I mean, that's not even remarkable. Why would you expect Chester is anything other than that? Nasty business in Chester. There's a lot of cities like Chester out there, though.
Wesley says, Colin speaks my life's truth. Thanks for having him on.
Everybody out there that has the experience like Wesley or that guy from Detroit or my friends, they're so traumatized by the black violence that they have experienced. And it's usually not something, you experience it by yourself. And so you're traumatized. You're drowning and you don't even have a moment to lift your head up above the water to realize, hey, this isn't just me. This isn't just me in this school. There are other people this is happening to in this school, in other grades, and there are other people happening to all over the country. And so a lot of people, they're a little worried, afraid to talk about it because they don't think anybody's going to believe them. Well, I believe them because I know what happened in those schools. I know what's happening in those schools.
It's so sad. And, parents, and we've got, considering this is my backup channel, we've actually got quite a few viewers tonight. So people are still finding this show, even though they're keeping my channel suppressed. My other channel has, not nearly as many followers as you. I've got like 60,000 subscribers on the main channel, but even though they try to suppress it, it's still getting out. So let's talk about, let's see, let's go into, how do you pronounce his name? Jesse Smollett? Jesse?
Okay, hold on. I happen to know this, so I studied this for 1 minute, so I'm gonna insist we pronounce it correctly. Jesse Smollett. Boy, he's really a piece of work, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. And this isn't even an original incident.
No. The thing I think, and that's the takeaway on this, right? The takeaway is not that there's this psycho guy going around spreading false stories of people in MAGA hats. That's not the takeaway. The takeaway is the same takeaway that we get from other examples of these black hoaxes, which is we see time and time again how eager the reporters are to participate in this hoax, how eager they are to participate in perpetuating the greatest lie of our generation, the myth of black victimization. And so, Jesse, he wasn't, again, the day after he got, after that unbelievably traumatic incident that happened to him, nothing, he was out there telling people, hey, remember people, it's not just about me, Jesse. I'm worried about all the other people out there this is happening to. Translation. There are groups of white people wearing MAGA hats roaming the country, attacking black people. And so that gets back to what we were talking about earlier, which is, okay, listen, reporter, all you have to do, it's not hard, ask a question. When you hear that, just say, Jesse, could you give me an example of that? It doesn't happen. But these reporters, they can't get enough of it. I mean, we just got over the Covington thing, right? Was there any difference between Covington and Jesse Smollett? Any difference whatsoever? None. And yesterday on CNN, they had a little They had they had a reporter, Stelter, and they had a guy from the Stetler, and they had a guy from the New York Times, Charles Blow, and Allison Camerata. And all the people from CNN agreed that it wasn't the reporters who perpetuated this hoax and this myth. It was the celebrities. Of course, now everybody today is, including me, we're putting out videos going, listen, you guys were in on it from the beginning. Don't try to tell me you sat there with any amount of skepticism. You took it hook, line, and sinker, the whole story, not just the Jussie story. You took the bigger story that there's an enormous amount of white on black violence. That's, black people are running afraid all over America. It's not happening, not even a little bit. And you know it's not happening. And you sit there and look into your cameras at CNN and you lie your butts off. And you think all of us are just going to sit out here and go, wow, I guess you're telling the truth, aren't you? No. We don't play that game anymore, do we?
No, absolutely not. Yeah, and it's become also common, this whole bait and switch. They do the crime and then flip it, and go ahead.
That's the next phase of this, right? So, I mean, we did a story about 18 months ago about these girls in Albany, New York. 3 black women on a bus attacked 20 kids, 20 white kids, all at the University of Albany. They get off the bus, they call 911, and they go, "We just been attacked by a bunch of white kids." Well, a month later, we get the videos. But in the month that ensued, this was all a true story, right? Hillary Clinton tweeted it. The president of the university got up and gave a speech about it at a Martin Luther King Day breakfast about, we're not going to take this on my watch. No, all this white on black violence. No. A month later, they finally released. You know how many cameras are on that bus? 12. They released 12 camera angles, audio too. And it was just night and day. The 3 black women were antagonizing and physical and aggressive with the white kids. The white guys were trying to get in the way and go, "Hey, come on, calm down." So they went to trial. One girl pleaded guilty. The 2 pled not guilty. They were found guilty of a lesser offense. They go out on the steps of the courthouse afterwards, and this to me is the real story. They go out on the steps of the courthouse with their parents and their lawyers, and they explain to everybody they're the victims. And even though that story wasn't true, there's still a lot of racism at the University of Albany, and you guys better figure that out. And that's what's going to happen to this Smollett. He's going to keep, no matter what happens to him till the day he dies, he's going to be on a talk show explaining about white people running around the country in MAGA hats, beating up black people and gay people when it's not true.
You think he'll get a day in prison like anybody who files a false police report would?
Boy, that's a good question. But I don't normally get into the predicting the future business, mostly because predicting the future is against the law in New York. But I've just never seen it.
Hey, it's illegal to murder, babies though in New York. They have, you got to protect the children, but murder the babies.
Strange business. But so I don't do the future thing, but I do know that the pattern of the people who do these elaborate hoaxes, they never change. It's always the black victimization, and the appetite among reporters and public officials and other people to hear this story of black victimization, it is limitless. Even if, you've already, like Tawana Brawley, who could be worse than her? Do you remember they found her like 2 years ago?
No.
Okay. So Tawana Brawley, you guys remember, Al Sharpton was her advisor. And she claimed she was raped by cops and district attorneys in her town in New York. Al Sharpton was the one representing her in front of the press. Turned out to be a big hoax. They sued her and won. So she disappears. She shows up 2 years ago. I think National Enquirer found her. And so that way they could get the money, at least put a lien on her wages. A month later, she's back in New Jersey, and a bunch of black leaders and ministers are putting on a fundraiser for Tawana Brawley to help her pay this judgment, because they knew she was a victim of racism, whether she was, actually raped by those big bad cops or not. I mean, it was just pure fiction.
What do you have to say when somebody says blacks are being manipulated from all angles? They truly are victims of a big effing hoax. What do you say to that? Are they the victims of the hoax, or are they the perpetrators of the whole thing inside out and backwards, upside down, and every which way?
I get those letters probably a couple times a week. And they'll always start this way. They'll start, "Hey, Colin, I liked your video on this. I liked your video on that. I liked your video how you exposed the black violence. I liked your video how you exposed the reporters covering up for it. And Colin, that's why I hate." Then you fill in your favorite group you like to hate because they like everybody blames somebody for it. So my thing is, if you, I don't really, if you are conking somebody over the head, I'm blaming you. And I'm
Right.
not going to say, listen, you had a bad experience doing some marketing in San Francisco 11 years ago, on the streets of San Francisco 11 years ago. If you conk somebody over the head, you're going to jail or prison, okay? And I don't want to hear anything. I don't want to hear any causes, solution, excuses, whatever. I just do not. Does that make me a bad person? Probably.
Well, anybody who doesn't like truth, especially, these social justice warrior snowflake democrats.
We were talking a little bit off the air about all the, from Facebook and YouTube. They hire all these people now to kind of monitor the channel and accept all the complaints. I think YouTube has like 7,500 people. But here's what's to me most interesting about that is I think most of them don't live in the country. I think Facebook and YouTube are hiring people for like $3 an hour all over the world. So it's weird when you think somebody sitting in a village hut in India is basically declaring it's their say what you and I are allowed to talk about on YouTube or Facebook. Does that sound weird to you?
Oh, absolutely. And anytime I post an important video, for instance, we've been doing a series exposing Islam, and every video but one in the whole series has been demonetized. And of course, people go and hit the report button right away, and then it gets flagged, and then they demonetize it, and you have to file a counterclaim, and then you got to wait for them to review it, and then 9 times out of 10 they'll deny the
Look, by definition of YouTube, by definition, if 10 people complain about your video, that is a violation of community standards. But by definition, that's the only test, right?
Yeah, well, and
Now,
that's what they did to me. That's how they got my live feed shut down. Was they filed a bunch of fake complaints against me and had my live feed shut down.
So here's the thing. Here's the way what our little snowflakes, wherever they may be, they're not prepared to do, because our viewers are really depending on us for information, right? You and I are not good enough to sit here and tell people something that isn't true. People know if what we're saying is true before they start following us. They really want to say, "Hey, is that Colin? Is that really happening?" People could shut us down. They could shut us down by showing that we're wrong. That's all. Show me I'm wrong. Hell, I'll go back to playing golf with rich people. Okay, that's what I'll go back to doing. I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for that first person to come in and show me I'm wrong.
As you know, I'm a researcher on the history of the 60s counterculture and all of that, and I've put out a lot of forensic research exposing the ties to the intelligence community, launching, Tim Leary admitted he was CIA. You and I talked about Allen Ginsberg, and you had met him when you were a youth, but Allen Ginsberg working for them when you were
Spent
on
2 days in jail with Allen Ginsberg.
Right. When you were on the show back in 2017. And I've been waiting for nearly a decade now for one person to prove any of my research wrong. And they'll attack me, ridicule, do anything but show how any of the research is wrong. They can't do it. And they never will. You haven't posted. Go ahead.
No. It'd be easy to do, right? If they had something, if they could show you were wrong, they would do it.
Exactly right. So you haven't posted anything on university violence in a day or two, maybe? You want to talk about that?
Yeah, let me see.
No. Yeah, that's right. You did. It was right on the edge of the campus. It wasn't on the campus. That's right. My mistake.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, I just posted something like maybe today on a school called LaSalle University.
Right after I said it, I realized that you did just post something today.
And I think when I haven't done something on a topic for a while, so I try to like group my stuff into topics. We do a lot of stuff on black violence on college campuses. So I think on that one, I kind of reminded everybody what happens on college campuses around the country in places like where they're near the hood. Temple, LaSalle, Philly, lots of bad business, and a big like crime spree happening now at LaSalle. And again, always wondering, like, where are these professors that are always so eager to be in front of a camera to talk about Black Lives Matter and how wonderful they are, but when some of the fellas are conking kids over the head and leaving them literally in a pool of blood, now where are the professors to explain what it all means to us? I never see them. There's a lot of colleges where white kids are just targets on campus and off campus.
Would you like to play a video or two?
Sure, go ahead. Anything you want.
All right, why don't we play this one? You had sent me one about the tourists in New Orleans, and
I was just going to mention that.
Yeah, we had talked about that at the beginning of the show, but let's play that clip here. Hopefully I get the audio right this time.
You're
in a movie theater. You're at the park. You're at a basketball game.
Breaker 19.
You see a large group of fellas and their lovely ladies. They are misbehaving.
Hopefully the audience is hearing.
You point out the error of their ways. You're a regular old white guy. You tell the fellas to knock it off.
I don't know where.
What happens?
Here we go. I have a group of friends in town from Colorado to celebrate a birthday. Say their trip turned into a nightmare when a group of teens attacked them.
Amanda Roberts spoke to one of the tourists. She joins us now with the story.
Yeah, they're hearing us too.
Gabrielle Lee says she and her friends were enjoying their time Saturday at the Chewbacca's parade and around town when a group of teenagers attacked them, putting her longtime boyfriend, Mark Whitaker Allen, in the hospital. They've all returned home to Colorado now, and Allen is recovering from facial and brain injuries after he sustained after the fight. Lee says it all started because some teens were harassing a homeless woman when one of their friends stepped in to stop the verbal attacks. And that's when, she says, things escalated. More teens poured out of a nearby party bus surrounding the group near St. Charles and Canal Street. She says Allen tried to pull his friends away from the teens to de-escalate the situation when he was punched in the side of the head, falling to the ground unconscious.
He wasn't awake and I knew not to move him. And once I saw him start moving and trying to move his head, I rolled him over and his teeth and blood were all over my hands. But luckily he was awake.
Happening right now, the search for the people who attacked a group of tourists in the heart of New Orleans. One of those tourists beaten so badly he had to go to the hospital. Good evening. I'm Katie Moore.
And I'm Tan Trung. The visitors to our city say they were good Samaritans trying to protect a homeless woman. Danny Monteverdi was able to talk with that victim despite his injuries. He's live along Canal Street where that attack happened. Danny?
Good evening, Ton. As the police continue to chase down leads in this case, the victim of that brutal attack is now preparing for his next visit to the hospital after the sudden and violent attack.
Whit Allen and his friends were living it up in New Orleans this past weekend to celebrate his 30th birthday. They spent time drinking hurricanes at Pat O's and took in the sights of Carnival as Chewbacca rolled through the Marigny. But the fun came to a sudden and violent end early Sunday morning on Canal Street.
And when I fell into the concrete, all the teeth got pushed up into my face.
The trouble began when Allen and his friends came across a party bus near Canal in St. Charles.
The kids in the back of the bus were screaming at this homeless lady that was like sitting on the sidewalk.
One of his friends tried to step it and stop it.
Next thing I know is that all these kids, like all these guys from the bus, start popping out of the bus like one by one.
Whit Allen and his friends say they were walking in this part of Canal Street when the attack happened, and they say it happened just like that.
Like maybe 3 seconds is all that it took.
Someone in the group, which Allen and his friends say was about 20 guys, threw punches. Allen and one of his friends were hit. Allen was knocked out.
I was bleeding everywhere. There was blood, just all down my shirt.
Allen was rushed to University Medical Center where doctors treated him for a broken jaw and fractures to his face.
I pretty much lost the fourth center of my teeth, and then obviously this was like a hole completely through my lip, and I had this big hole in my chin, and then there are stitches on the inside of my lip, so yeah, it was kind of extensive.
He's back home in Denver now, but he still has months of doctors and dentist visits ahead of him.
And they're going to have to do a bone graft to let that heal for probably about 9 months at least.
I've seen
and
this
then
one before.
they'll be able to do implants. So I can have teeth again.
And sadly, he says he probably won't be so quick to try to help someone else in need again.
In Denver, if I had saw someone screaming at a bunch of homeless people, I definitely would have gotten up there and said something like, knock it off. But I'm going to think about that twice next time.
Well, that's what happened. That's what happens.
Someone just said if they don't mention the race, they weren't white.
Fellas are not into getting disrespected by a bunch of white people who made
that, Colin?
No, because
even like
I
anyway.
I check every single one where I identify the people as black, and they're right. Most of the time, overwhelmingly, it's a black thing.
Could have been
but
New
that
Orleans.
Doesn't relieve anybody of the responsibility to check it out before you say it.
Could have been
period.
Chicago.
Boy, how do you? I don't know how to get
Baltimore,
this
Washington.
website out of full screen here. Oh well, it's it'll just have to play in the background there. But I've never used that Minds website before, so.
Well, we can talk over it.
Oh, it's all right. I got it down. I was just trying to play another one of the clips, but I can't even figure out how to minimize the full screen thing. The button is totally gone. So let's see. I've got a couple other things I wanted to bring up here before we wrap it up. How many news reports do you receive a day, would you say, approximately?
A lot. Hundreds and hundreds, sometimes over 1,000.
Over 1,000 a day, and you manage to go through them every day?
A lot of them, yeah.
That's incredible.
Sometimes I'll get a couple hundred reports on the same thing, like the Jussie Smollett thing. It'll be like, Colin, do you see this? This guy in Chicago, I think it's a fake hate crime. Wow.
Let's talk about this false notion of how this violence is random.
Boy, when a reporter goes to a scene of a crime and he sees something fitting a pattern, but the pattern's too abhorrent to report, or he's just not smart enough to get his mind around it, he'll pull a word out of his pocket and he'll say it's random. And what he really means is this is a pattern of black on white crime and violence that has been happening in this neighborhood, in this city for a very long time. And since I don't want to say what it is, I'm just going to call it random and hope you don't figure it out. Well, we figured it. Everybody knows what random means now. It means it's something that's not random.
What is the single worst incident you've ever come across?
I don't know why this one thing sticks in my mind, but it does. Maybe because it brought in the cops and the 911. So it was in Middletown, Ohio. There's so many. Middletown, Ohio, a young white woman with a couple kids coming home on Thanksgiving Day saw a bunch of fellas and their lovely ladies coming out of her house carrying her flat screen TV. She called the cops. Burglars. The cops came and they arrested a couple people. For the next 6 months, they were coming back to her house. All these black people were coming back to their house and drive-bys, hanging out in her front yard, in her backyard, threatening her, yelling at her, throwing things at her house. They called her a cop caller. She was a snitch. They threatened her. Finally, then the last part of this plays out on 911. She calls 911 and she goes, and this is on one of my videos. She calls 911 and she goes, hey, there's a bunch of people in my backyard. They're trying to set my house on fire, and they're trying to get in my front door. And it's so weird. The 911 operator, because they knew who she was because she'd been calling the cops for all the entire 6 months, and the cops couldn't have cared less. There were children in that house. Finally, she got out of the house. They burned that house down. They burned her house down. And the cops and the DA and the newspaper could not have cared less about it. I don't know what kind of country we're living in where people can just do that without fear of consequence now.
And I want to remind people as we wrap it up here that my show is run on donations. I appreciate any help you folks can offer. I've been posting the donation link up there in the chat. And you can find Colin's website at colinflaherty.com. There was one other thing I wanted to bring up here, maybe two. Let's see. You had once, this is the one that sticks in my mind. This is the one where I just went, holy crap. So it was a couple of years ago. You had showed a video of 3 guys sitting on the shore smoking a joint and watching someone drown in a lake. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And would you like to talk about that?
Well, yeah, you tell us what you remember about it.
Well, just that. So there's I think it was a lake, and this guy had fallen in the water or was unable to swim, and he was in the center of the lake. And you had, as you call them, three fellas sitting on the shore. They're all smoking a joint or a blunt, and they're sitting there laughing the whole time. Hey, look, watch this guy drowning out here. They're passing the joint back and forth while they're videoing the whole thing and broadcasting it on Facebook or wherever they put it out. And the guy actually did drown. He died. And, and they just sat there laughing about the entire event.
If you look up on Google or DuckDuckGo, whatever you want to look it up on, you'll find this.
I think Google's gone these days. I think it's all gone to DuckDuckGo.
Yeah, that's what I do. Anyway, so you'll find, if you look this up, you'll find this is true, that about 70, 75, 80% of black people cannot swim. And whenever whenever you hear about that number in the New York Times, it's always surrounding a story about how black people are victims of relentless violence and harassment at New York City swimming pools. When the fact is, they had to close these pools down because of the amount of black violence in these pools, much of it visited upon women in bathing suits. These pools are like a center of really nasty business. Anyway, I thought I'd throw that in there.
Somebody is saying, to be honest, I've run into some pretty shitty white people. We're not saying there aren't bad white people, but we're saying the rate of violence is, and I sent you a list of statistics earlier yesterday or day before.
Did you sent me that like 2-page?
Yeah.
That was astonishing.
And maybe we should go into some of that. I've actually got it up here.
You know what? Yeah, read some of them off.
I'm just going to go through a few of these. Let's see. Oh, 48.
And they're all sourced.
And they're all sourced. 48% of African Americans have herpes simplex virus. That's sourced from the CDC. Gonorrhea rates are 30 times higher in African Americans than whites. Police hesitate longer to shoot black suspects than white suspects. Over 100 white women are raped or sexually assaulted by black men every day in the United States.
So that's 30,000 a year. That's about right.
Yeah. Let's see. Blacks are overrepresented in serial killings. Blacks are overrepresented among child abusers. And these aren't due to biased reporting. 39% of all cop killers are black, although blacks represent 12% of the population. 73% of black babies are born out of wedlock. Let's see. Let's skip down here some of these. 93% of black men are murdered or killed by other black men. Let's see. Blacks commit 56% of all robberies, despite being 12% of the population. Blacks commit 50% of all murders, despite being 12% of the population. Let's see here. Despite making up... So blacks commit 1 in every 3 rapes, despite being 12% of the population. Black men kill 14 times more than white men. And blacks are 7 times more likely than whites to commit murder. Students of all races perform worse in schools with more black students. Blacks have an average... let's skip that. I don't want to get people upset. The percentage of blacks in a city, not poverty, is the best predictor of crime. Blacks are 600 times more likely than non-blacks to commit murder. In New York City, 1% of people arrested for shootings were white, while 74% were black. And, of course, they're trying to ban guns in New York and everything, and it's like, hello. In New York City, 43% of people arrested for rape were black. In New York City, 61% of people arrested for robbery were black. And, of course, these are all cited. This is NewYorkCity.gov. The last ones that I read are all from NewYorkCity.gov. I think that's probably enough.
Let me interject some.
Sure.
Interject some reality / insanity into what you just said. When black people that I deal with hear those numbers, their uniform response is, there's over policing in the black community. And that's the only reason there's more black people arrested, is because too many cops there. Took those cops out of that neighborhood, put them in a white neighborhood, you'd get the same numbers for white people. That's word for word. You can hear that almost every day of the week on national media. Over policing, that's the buzzword.
Yeah, indeed. And some people are saying in the chat, they don't like what you're having to say, and these are difficult subjects and people just need to be aware of it. It's not that, we're trying to be racist. We're just presenting facts. Deal with the facts and the truth, regardless of whether or not you like it,
I don't like the fact that Gwyneth Paltrow and Angelina Jolie are not standing off camera ready to give me a shoulder rub when this show is over. I don't like that one damn bit. Happens to be the truth, though. They're not there.
Yeah, well, and my work is actively suppressed all over the place too. And they'll talk about my work, but they'll never mention that it's my work. I'll see these shows all over the internet talking about my research. They won't mention my name or where to find it. Colin, great show.
That's why you and I have to build up our own audience, independent of the clowns.
Absolutely.
That's what email's all about.
Great show tonight. I appreciate you coming back on. We'll have to do this again sometime. This topic doesn't go away, and so I'll follow up with you sometime and bring you back on for a third time. And you were on.
I told you we would never run out of stuff to talk about.
Right. Yeah. And for those who want to find your first interview with me, it's episode 81. If people want to search UnSpun episodes and find that. But greatly appreciate your time tonight, and so this is probably a good place to wrap it up, unless you have something more to add. Thank you so much, Colin, and ladies and gentlemen, thanks for your time. Thank you to those who sent your donations and support. I really appreciate it. Please check out logosmedia.com, and that's it for tonight, everybody. Good night.